My name is Miguel Vadillo. I'm Mexican. Um, I have been around sports since I'm 5 years old. I lived in the Mexican Mayan Riviera at some point when my parents, when I was very little, and my dad used to take us into the ocean, and we were just having fun there. And I learned how to swim that way, or what I thought it was learning to swim. Um, it wasn't really learning to swim. What happened later is that we went to live in Mexico City, and when I was at school, I was in the first grade, and somebody came to offer swimming lessons, and immediately I was like, yeah, I want to be in the water. That's really fun. And I went there, bugged my dad and my mom. I want to take lessons, and I want to take lessons, I want to take lessons, and then finally they got me into the lessons, and I didn't like it one bit. It was awful because I had to listen to this guy telling me what to do, and I just wanted to play in the water. So it was awful. But and that's the way I remember it, anyways. But I was scared to say that to my dad because I have been bugging them so much that I just stuck to them. And then I learned how to swim there, and then went to my first competition. And I remember very clearly that time. It was 20 meters the pool was 20 meters, and I had to swim those 20 meters, and I didn't even been able to swim that length, and I stopped and whatever. But it was a lot of fun, and I started to get some friends from there. And a year after, somebody asked me if I wanted to be in their competitive swim team, and I said, yeah, sure. And oh, that, at least is how I remember it, because many of the kids that were with me, it was going to it, and I just thought it would be fun. It's swimming more times a week, and that will be it. Like 45 years later, it just becomes my life, pretty much, right? Yeah.
Cool. What tell us about swimming across Lake Ontario. What was that like?
Well, there is a story behind that, as you can imagine. Um, I was 13 or 14 years old, and there was this guy that at the time looked to us really old, big belly, beard, um, talking to the swim team about swimming across the English Channel. And it turns out that he was the first Mexican that ever swam the English Channel. And it sounded really cool to do something like that and different from the pool and that kind of thing. And my friend Enrique and I, at that time, 13 or 14, we said that one day we will swim together the English Channel. We didn't have a clue where the English Channel was or what it means or anything like that. But we said that we will do it. Well, I don't know about Enrique. I didn't know anything about the English Channel. Um, the thing is, uh, time passes. We are competitive swimmers. We swam in several national team events. He was one of the best breaststrokers in Mexico at our time. And at some point, he goes to university, goes to live in England, and I come here when I was 34 in Canada. And he called me and said, you know what, remember that idea of swimming the English Channel? Well, I have the time. My daughters are old enough to support this, and the company that I work for is supporting it, so I'm going to start training. And I just arrived here, and I was settling, and it wasn't an easy process for me. So I said, go ahead, and good luck. And he said, no, but if you're not swimming it, I want you to be part of my crew. And I said, sure, I want to learn about the experience for sure. And in 2007, he set to swim the English Channel, and I was there. And it was a great experience. I learned enormous amount of information just by being in the camp, waiting a week until the weather window opens for him. And when I came back, then somebody at the Toronto Star where I was working told me, you should swim Lake Ontario. And I said, yeah, sure. I, again, didn't have a clue what did that mean. Like, I see the lake, but I said, yeah, sure, I probably could do that. But then he just seeded that idea into my mind. And then little by little, I started reading here and there and researching and Googling it and seeing what is the difference and the changes in temperatures and the fact that it's a third longer than the English Channel, and what are the challenges of it. And that, I mean, I was just, yeah, one day. I was in Niagara on the lake one day, and I saw the plaque where all the names of the people that have swum the lake are there. And it happens that was a very clear day, and you could see the CN Tower on the other end. And it's like, yeah, I think I can do this, actually, but never had the motivation to do it. So about a month later, after that, I was working like every day at the Star, and it came to me this story that I had to work on the page, where there was a very sad story where a family, a little girl went into a pool and started drowning, and the sister tried to save her, and the sister didn't know how to swim, and the mother jumped in, and the three of them died, and I was really flustered, and I remember being upset and sad and angry at the same time, and I think that was the trigger that said, you know what, yes, I can do the lake, and I can do it to fundraise for kids to learn how to swim. And pretty much that was it. I mentioned it to Barry a couple times about the idea of doing it, and we were at a book signing for Simon Whitfield, and he happens to ask Barry, can just announce it to everybody. Miguel's going to be swimming Lake Ontario next year, so it seems like it was happening, and then I didn't have, I wanted to do it anyways, so, but he put me in a position where I didn't have much room to back out. So I started training, and I trained for 11 months with learning a lot about cold water, putting myself into very harsh conditions because that was my biggest fear, the cold water. The distance never was something that I was very concerned. My concern was the darkness and the cold water. So I read a lot about it, and I made a lot of mistakes, like putting 24 pounds on purpose to be able to hold the cold, which wasn't really needed, but I didn't know at the time. I just went to the common belief instead of scientific research. But anyways, and in August 2010, after a long period of not knowing if I was about to do it because I didn't have boats to get along with me, like just go with me, Barry finally found Royal Containers and Benson Steel, that still are sponsors of this wonderful club, to help me out with the boats, and then we rented it and we went on. And I was lucky enough to have one of the most wonderful conditions in terms of weather and wind. But it happens that for about 4 hours, the water temperature dropped from 17, 16 degrees to 7 Celsius. And it was very painful. For 4 hours, I don't remember. I don't remember what happened for 4 hours. And I know I don't remember because there are things that happened that I remember in one way, and the rest of the crew remember very clearly that it wasn't like that. Like, in my head, I wanted coffee. And instead of asking for coffee, I asked for something warm. So my wife, very lovingly, go to the big boat, and at the kitchen, she prepares chicken broth. And then in the next feeding, she throws the bottle of chicken broth, and I'm expecting coffee because in my head, that's what I asked. And it's this salty thing that I thought it was disgusting at that point because I was expecting coffee. And in my head, what I did is just throw it, very annoyed, and continue swimming. What really happens, and I know this because they told me, is that I actually threw the bottle at my wife and I insulted her and told her that she was a useless person. And same with the crew. And I honestly don't remember all these things. And then about 5 o'clock in the morning, it was like coming back from a deep sleep. Like, really, when would you wake up and you don't even remember why did you get to where you were, like, or you don't know where you are? Now it's like that. And then it's like, oh, this is not as painful as it was. And it just happened that we snap out of that patch of really cold water, and it rises up about 16 again. And it was much easier for me and for my body to continue to go. And after that, the wind picked up, and it was kind of hard, but it wasn't anything more than just putting the head down. When I was really cold, at some point I just wanted to ask them to get me out because it was really painful. But I was always thinking, this is not even 4 hours into the freaking swim. There's a lot of people that have pledged money for this thing. I have these people that are supposed to be swimming when it's daylight with me, and at least I owe them to them to just keep going. And actually, it was the think of others, the thought of others, of putting myself for others that kept me there. But if it wasn't for me, like I would have gotten out for sure. Yeah.
What was the biggest lesson you learned in crossing Lake Ontario like that?
We need to be flexible. To me, that's the biggest lesson. There is a whole bunch of things that this project threw at me that I didn't have any control. And if I wasn't able to bend and to adapt and to say, well, there's nothing I can do about this and just find a different way, I wouldn't be able to do it. And I still believe that many people that attempt and they are not successful is because of it. And it taught me that sometimes there are good days and sometimes there are not good days, but each little moment adds up to something. There were times that I was working at Toronto Star. I lived in Guelph. The commute was really long, and I had to train. In my head, I had to train. So I would stop somewhere along Lake Ontario and get into the water alone and start swimming. And 5 minutes into the swim is really cold, and I was like overwhelmed. Like, what the hell am I doing here alone? And this is just stupid. Like, I'm putting myself in a risk that I don't need to be, and then just get out and then feel guilty because I only swam 5 minutes and I needed to train much longer. But then it's just switching and this thought of being flexible, and then, well, it was 5 minutes, but it was 5 minutes at 10 degrees, and my body is getting used to that. And to me, that's the biggest lesson, to be flexible in life and just go with what you can control and be humble to just adapt to whatever you need to. Yeah.
Why are you so passionate about coaching now? Coaching, and you're a fantastic coach, and your passion really comes through when you're coaching others. So what is it that motivates you to get out and coach?
I believe that when I was a competitive swimmer or a pentathlete, I never got to where I wanted to be. I didn't go to the Olympic Games, even though I was very close. I was training with people that went to Olympics. I was better than them in some events and not in others. And I think whatever I did there, it was because of my coaches. Because today, most of them are friends of mine, and I learn a lot from them. And I understood at the time that they were only trying to help me to get to where I wanted to be. And at some point when I came to Canada, I came to be a modern pentathlon coach. And on the go, I was discovering that I was helping them achieve things. And when people achieve things, I feel just as excited as them. And to me, it's not my achievement, but I feel it like I was part of it. And that's very exciting. And then also, it's not the same to be 17 to being 40 something, and looking at other people's achievements and knowing that their satisfaction brings me a lot of satisfaction, and their frustration and their struggles are mine. I'm always trying, I make them mine somehow, and I try to figure out how to get out of that together. I don't know where it comes from, to be honest. I just feel that it brings me joy, and it brings me a lot of satisfaction to be able to do these things. I'm very privileged, having worked in newspapers, being a graphic designer, and now doing what I do in this beautiful place, I I literally do things that people do in their holidays or their free time, and I'm getting paid. That is a privilege that I cannot uh, forget or have for granted. I am very grateful that I have these opportunities because I made the decision at some point. And no, it wasn't easy. Um, it was scary not being able to, if I wouldn't make a living or not, and that kind of thing. But actually, the money became a secondary thing. It's just the fact that I really enjoy doing this.
What advice do you give swimmers who are new to open water?
Well, mechanics are very important to be able to be symmetrical, to be balanced on one side or the other, because that helps navigation. In a pool, you don't need to navigate anything. You just go on a straight line because you have a line on the bottom and then you have the two lane groups. In an open water situation, you don't have that. And it's very easy to veer one way to another. And the most important part for me is to be able to swim less. If you swim less, you will be faster, and that's the goal eventually. So the most repetitive thing that I do with most of the athletes that I coach is to be able to navigate well and be balanced. After that, it's just to be comfortable. I do believe that many people teach swimming in many different ways, and there's hundreds of ways to learn how to swim. To me, and that's the way I teach it, there is three things that really matter. The first one is breathing, because without breathing we can't be alive. And learning to breathe properly is not an easy thing in the water for most people, especially at the beginning. And the second one is balance, because the balance allows to be powerful. And the third one is power. If one of them is lacking, the other two suffers. And whatever we do is always comes down to that: breathing, balance, and power. And that's what I constantly are reminding all my swimmers to think of. Because one way, if we do one way well, everything falls in place and is smooth. If we're lacking one, the other ones are suffering, so we need to fix one to be able to get better at the other two. That's pretty much what I do most of the time.
What's the biggest misconception swimmers have? Let's say a swimmer who maybe they think they know what they need to change about their stroke or something when they go into the open water, but really it's a misconception, because I think there are a lot of misconceptions about open water. Like, one of them is that when you're in open water, you have to increase your stroke rate, for example. You know, there are all these sort of things that people think that are different for open water. Is there any misconceptions that you'd like to sort of clear up?
Oh, there is a lot of that. There is a lot of that, and I do believe that comes from the experiences of the many different people. And I know for a fact that there is things that works for one person but didn't necessarily work for another. And if you're the coach and that worked for you, you usually tend to use those things that work for you. But unfortunately, not necessarily is the better advice, because it might not work for other people. And for example, is that one: if you increase your stroke rate, you're going to be better. And that is not true. You need to be able to read the elements and adapt to the elements, because they are not going to adapt to you. The water is not going to adapt to you. The wind is not going to be less strong because you are not a strong swimmer. That's not going to be anything that you can control. So your stroke rate need to adapt to whatever the conditions you have. That is one of the misconceptions, but there are tons of them, because it might be somebody that just by swimming faster, they have had good success. And they think that that's the way that we should do it, until you find the conditions that prove you wrong. And sometimes that doesn't happen because whatever reason we don't race as often as we could, and there is many other places that you can go, and always is changing. So I think that is one of the main. The other one is that you have to breathe bilaterally, for example, because that keeps you balanced. Yes, there is an advantage of that, but there is people that it's most costly for them to do that. So why would you put in a situation where it's much more uncomfortable for them, and it costs them to be uncomfortable, rather than breathing every time that they need to breathe, and then make them slide more often so they know that they're on the right line and that kind of things. So I would always suggest and encourage to be balanced and to be bilateral breathing, but people doesn't have to. If that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah.
So if somebody's looking to get in the water with you, where can they find more information about swimming with you?
Well, there is a website that is called embraceopenwater.com. And there's all the information there on the programs that we have. And now that we have a pool in Brampton, we are giving lessons to children, but also we want to turn it into a training center for triathletes, open water swimmers, and master swimmers, because that's something that I enjoy the most. So we're having teachers teaching little kids and of all abilities from beginners to not so beginners. And I am now developing these programs for open water swimmers and triathletes. And embraceswimming.ca or embraceopenwaterswimming.com.
Great. And where are we right now? Can you describe our current location? What do we
Yeah,
do? What do we do here?
This is the James D. Quarry in Caledon, Caledon East in Ontario. And it's a wonderful place where the C3 Canadian Cross Training Club has the use of it. And we have a course of 1 kilometer around, and we conduct our practices every Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday mornings, coached ones, and then over the week people can come and swim around on the different times that are available for them. And it's really wonderful to have this thing set up and never changes, and it's safe, and it's never changes much in temperature. It's pretty cozy here, and we can really train well for open water and develop skills here. This is a great place.
Any final words of encouragement for somebody who's maybe not a swimmer but thinking about getting into swimming? What would you say to someone who's maybe they're a little bit scared or intimidated by getting in the water, in the open water? Do you have any words of encouragement for somebody like that?
Yes, come and try it here. The group is very encouraging and very patient, and I try to make it very comfortable for everybody. From the little ropes that we have here, where we can start learning how to swim and feeling confident there before we go out into the more open and more deep waters, to the competitive, fast, elite athletes that we have here. There is a little piece of everything that we all benefit training together, and we learn from each other. It doesn't matter who we are. So come and try it.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Miguel.
Thank you, Jason.